Well,
Mhm.
the board of directors meeting was on a Thursday. He told the truth. So he acted in an ethical manner. And then that Monday, he was discharged by the CEO.
Welcome to the CNL podcast, where we dive deep into the minds of IT and security professionals to uncover their experiences, challenges, and best practices in today's ever-evolving tech landscape. I'm your host, Sedric, also known as your cyber expert, and today we're diving deep into the evolving role of the Chief Information Officer, Leadership Ethics, and Private Equity Strategies with Tom Sweet, Chief Information Officer at Industrial Refrigeration Pros. Thanks for joining us today, Tom. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. So thank you. Hope you're fine too.
Thanks. Yeah, we're all good over here getting ready for the holidays. Ready to
Hmm.
enjoy the Christmas, the coquito,
Yeah.
and New Year's, all that good stuff. So
Yeah.
hopefully you are too.
Mhm.
So just to bring our listeners up to speed, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in the world of IT and security?
Oh, sure. So I actually went to university for civil engineering, which was roads and bridges and that sort of thing. I did that for about six years or so. And in Massachusetts, where I lived, there was a lot of people who did that same type of work. And with that Central Artery Third Harbor Tunnel project finishing up, a lot of extra talent. And at that time, there was a need for what we called high tech people back then. Right now we call it IT, but back then it was high tech. And that whole Massachusetts corridor around Boston had a lot of roles open. I took a chance and I made a career jump to work at NEC testing laptop computers. And I've been doing that type of work ever since. I've worked for startups and where you get to work 2 days a week from home and 5 days a week in the office. And I've worked at Microsoft on Office 2010 for a bit and worked at GM Financial and cloud. And now I'm a CIO of a private equity backed company and just building things and building everything from scratch. And it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you had some tenure at some very good shops already, and
Yeah.
you got to touch the startup world all the way up to the Fortune tens, right? So
Yeah.
that's awesome. So you say Office 2010. Well, and I didn't even join the IT industry until about 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
So definitely, I definitely can learn a lot from your tenure. So, as you were climbing the ranks, right?
Yeah.
Did you find any challenges that you faced that you had to overcome, or did everything just kind of fall into play like a movie? You're just trying to paint a picture
Well,
for your journey.
it wasn't a movie, right? NEC was a great job. And
Mhm.
I guess the challenge I had was not feeling as though I could have moved to management faster, right? When I was at my civil engineering job, I was a manager of people, but when I went into IT, because I was green and new, I didn't feel like I could do that. And I probably gave up on lots of opportunities for that lack of confidence of IT leadership, though that I think leadership can transcend industries, and that would be something that I wish I'd done differently. Has been a little bit more aggressive at moving towards management, and a little bit more aggressive at maybe role changes to continue advancing. But so that would be a challenge, and it wasn't until I left Microsoft in late 2009 that I went into a management role again. So that was a little bit of a time period where I hadn't been in management, and I picked it back up again. It was fine, but I should have been more aggressive at that. So,
Okay, fair enough. And I definitely think for me myself, when I was first breaking into the field, right, I had that lack of confidence, and I was
mhm,
partially due because kind of green,
mhm,
but there came a time where I had the experience, and I've been hunting bugs because I started off bug bounty hunting, just hacking people for free and reporting
yeah,
and just trying to build those relationships just to build my chops up. And just having that confidence was something that I was lacking. So when I got into certain interviews, I may not have exuded or conveyed the confidence that I had that matched my skill set, but I definitely think that the confidence is one of the key things, because even as a hiring manager myself now, sometimes I can understand where the lack of confidence comes in, but I see why some managers, with the hiring managers, if they don't feel that you're confident in your own ability, then how could they be confident in your ability to perform well in the role? So it goes hand in hand. It's like a
mhm,
double-edged sword, and confidence comes from the practice, really, and and talking with other individuals, right, that are in the field with you, like-minded, and getting that repetition. Because also it's the soft skills, right? The soft skills
mhm.
as a leader, they matter just as much as the technical skills, I feel like, if not more. So in your current role as CIO, what does a typical day-to-day look like for you?
Yeah, so we're a small company, small as in 500 people, give or take. And so, my
That's large
role,
to me.
well, yeah, it compared to maybe a 10,000 person or a 40,000 person. So,
Hmm.
I'm much more hands-on than maybe most CIOs because of the size. So,
Hmm.
you know, I do work hand in hand with the executive team, whether it be a CEO or the COO or CFO mostly, and VP of HR, right, for business needs across the organization. We acquire companies occasionally, so I'll be part of that due diligence process. But most of the time, I'm looking at our billing coming in, the vendors that we're using. I'm looking at our security score in the morning, seeing what incidents have been, added into the event management system, or ordering computers. We have new hires coming, always trying to, 50-60% of my job and my team's job is cybersecurity, just the nature of the world we live in. So I'm playing both sides. I'm trying to deliver business value, and
Hmm.
I'm also managing security and making sure that we're secure. And I guess the good part is I'm responsible for both. So there's not a conflict, right? I've seen organizations where there's one person who's responsible and his or her bonus is based on delivery, and then someone else is completely based on not getting hacked, right? And that can be that conflict. We don't have that because I'm responsible for both, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely when there's that chain of command, that conflict, and you can kind of have sometimes
mhm.
just those priorities of the different individuals for the CISO or CIO, especially if they're reporting on different separate chains, kind of going against each other. Just really depends on
Mhm.
the shop. You touched on
Mhm.
something about, you guys private equity backed, you guys buy companies. I've worked mergers and acquisitions myself. So
Sure.
I've been throughout that process from the technical due diligence perspective, when you're pre-merger trying to figure out what are we actually buying here, right?
Yeah.
Is this a Swiss cheese environment? Is this environment already compromised? Are we about like what are we going to do with this environment per se? I'm not too sure how it works, in your space if you're looking to purchase companies and consolidate them into, your same environment or
Oh yeah,
the.
we definitely do that, right? And
Mhm.
most likely we would not purchase an organization because of their cybersecurity, but it's just good to know going in what kind of IT investment is going to be needed, and what
Mhm.
type of organizational change management is going to be needed. We're
Mhm.
purchasing very small companies that often don't have an IT team, or they use a managed service provider that might provide a small subset of services compared to what you and I might want for a completely secure system. And so, just looking at that and then trying to just provide feedback to the CFO that, this is the investment that we're going to need. And then
Mhm.
working with operations to say, this is the organizational change management that's going to be needed, because there is going to be a culture shock here. And you
Yep.
have to manage that culture shock and keep the company secure, right? Because you have to
Yep.
migrate their stuff in, like you said, and they've already been compromised. So, yeah.
Yep.
And the
Yep.
organizational change management is the fun part, right? The tech is easy.
Yep, the culture shock. You bring them in, you merge them in. Their password policy was 8 characters. Yours is 14, and now everyone's complaining. Oh, why do I have to increase my password size? Well, because we hold ourselves to a higher standard here, along with other things. And I definitely can understand that. Make sure when you got to do that due diligence, especially when you're bringing any company on board, because you don't want to merge in an environment that gets your environment that you've worked so hard to secure and build a nice mature program for, and now the environment that you brought in just actually made it worse, right? With that being said, you're touching a lot of different plates, right? You got a lot of irons
Yeah.
in the fire as the CIO.
Mhm.
What do you see right now as the biggest security threat in your industry, and how are you combating it?
The biggest security threat I see is business email compromise. We have some very good tools for protecting against phishing. And one of the tools can read our email and read all the existing emails in Microsoft 365. And it
Hmm.
knows who we do business with and who we don't do business with. And
Hmm.
it will give us alerts that our trusted partners, meaning our customers or our vendors, have been compromised, because it'll say, company A has been impersonated, or
Hmm.
company A has sent phishing to other organizations, or
Mm.
worst case, company A has sent phishing to you, and those will be quarantined. Now the end users will say, "Well, we know this person, therefore we need the email." It's like, no, 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 no. you know their email address. You don't really know if that's who sent them because many companies are getting phished. And then the threat actor is then emailing everyone their sent items with a phish. And so it looks like, oh, we get an email from this company, we do business with them, and here's a new invoice or here's a new purchase order, and that's a phish. So
Yep.
that's the number one thing we see. We don't really see a lot of ransomware, though I know reading the news, it's definitely out there.
Yep.
Mostly it's phishing compromise with the evil Gen X, which is that adversary in the middle attack that is hitting Microsoft 365. So that's the biggest one we see.
Yeah, and you're not alone with when I ask that question, I'm always excited to see what that answer is going to be. And it seems like time and time again, it's phishing and business email compromise. And
Yeah.
with the fact with AI now, it's only going to get worse. It's no longer the email that's saying, "Hey, I have all this gold and oil money. If you just send me a little bit of money now, I can get the funds released, then I'll send you a piece." Now they're perfectly grammar formatted pretextual scenarios that's realistic, tailored to what that
Sure.
employee is would expect to see. And what I try to tell people, because I've been fishing people for years, legally of
Yeah.
course, and there's
Yeah.
a scenario that will get everybody. I myself
Yeah.
have been fishing. I've been got. The humans are always going to be the weakest link. So it just comes down to making sure that you're training your people, and you have the right compensating and technical controls, like how you said with the email, with your email filter, being able to pick up on heuristics like, hey, this company was sending out phishing emails, or this person is being impersonated, right? Or
Yeah.
just even having the banner that just says, hey, external party, make sure you trust this person before you click any links or open any attachments, right? That you were
Yeah.
expecting it. So definitely can understand that. What's been your approach like with AI and in your company? Are you guys taking advantage of it? Are you embracing it and putting a
We're
program around
definitely
that?
taking advantage of it. So we use it in IT for creating PowerShell code because we do a lot with Intune. We do a lot with
Mhm.
Defender and attack surface reduction rules
Mhm.
and Intune remediations, detection and remediation. And we do some fun stuff. And Microsoft Graph is maybe not something that everyone picks up that quickly. So you can use ChatGPT to create Microsoft Graph scripts, and they might come close to working. They get you a lot further than starting from scratch. And
Yep.
then we use it for content generation on the website, press releases, a lot of things that
It's
from a marketing
amazing.
perspective, right?
It
So
it's amazing, and you touched on a few heads. I'm using it. The time that I used to take scripting things out that would take me so long, because I consider myself an okay programmer, okay scripter, but with ChatGPT and it came out, I feel like it turned me to almost an expert, because I'm learning functions, I'm learning all new
yeah.
modules that
Mhm.
I didn't know about, that it would take me some time researching the
Yeah.
syntax and whatnot on how to structure or implement a certain logic to accomplish a certain function. And now I'm doing it in seconds with ChatGPT.
Mhm.
Yeah, sometimes it may not get it right off the bat the way I want, but I realize it's really all in the prompt, right? Like if you gotta make sure that prompt is tailored to what you really want, right? Because it's gonna give you what you want, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes it'll hallucinate though. It'll give you what you want, but it might not actually be a true. So always gotta double check. But definitely,
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of return on investment from just us in our internal shop. The way we've been using it, we've been using it to develop certain pieces of software. Some would consider malware, but for the engagements that we do for some of our clients, it revolves around us creating custom malware, because the
It's
regular,
business value,
yeah.
right? It is not a computer science exercise.
Mhm.
Business is delivering business value.
Yep.
And so if you can use a tool to deliver business value faster, you need to use that tool. If you
Yep.
want to make the optimal algorithm, then that's a computer science project. You can do that on your own time, but we
Yeah.
pay people to deliver business value, not to spend days building something to make it perfect, right? We need to get it out. And that's where ChatGPT really helps. And if it gives you the wrong answer, you tell it gave it the wrong answer. It'll say, "Oh, I apologize. Try this." And it'll come back, and you may take two or three iterations, but you'll get it right. So
Exactly. Yeah, I remember just an example. I was with Calendly, right? Calendly, I needed to be able to extract all my contacts from Calendly. They actually didn't have API documentation regarding the new contact function, that the endpoint that they had to export your
Mhm.
contacts. So what I did was I was like, I can do this with Python real quick. Let me go ahead and see if ChatGPT can help me out. I gave it the structure of the API endpoints and the types
Mhm.
of data it's expecting in the JSON format. And in the first iteration, it wasn't. It got the first page of context because there was pagination involved. So I ended up able to create a script that would take into account the pagination and the dynamic URL that's given to go to the next page, automatically go and scrape all my contacts for me and print it out to a CSV file so I could give to my team to be able to put it in our CRM system. Something that was taking us a lot of time before to do now, just like that in a second, just run the Python script and I'm able to extract everything out. It's like, wow, that just any way, shape, or form that you could deliver, like you said, deliver business value. I think if you have the technical competency too, it's your moral obligation to, because knowing that, hey, I'm spending way more time than I need to on this, where I could use this tool in a secure manner, of course, right, to deliver that business value in 10 times less, well, yeah, 10 times faster, you should be doing it. And one thing, a lot of people I've heard so far, and I want to hear what your take on this, how AI is going to shape the industry in terms of the opportunities taken that are being taken away in some industries and opportunities that are being created. I'll address the elephant in the room. Yes, AI is going to get rid of some of the mundane tasks and
Sure.
automate, but there's way more opportunity. I feel like there's going to be created out of AI advancing in the future than the opportunities that are taken away. AI might not take your job, but the person who understands how to leverage that AI will. That's just my 2 cents. I want to see what's your 2 cents
Okay.
on
So when we did a couple points to this, and there's been a lot of discussion in industry, as you know. So one person I have a lot of respect for, he talks about, over time, technology has taken more jobs and it's provided, and that's historically what's happened. Additionally, though, the point you just made is AI will take people jobs, but they'll be taken by people who know how to use AI.
it?
So if you don't embrace AI as part of your role, you will be replaced by someone who will embrace AI. And whether it be what we just discussed about the Python script, or how do you deliver more business value for your employer? And if you have a computer and someone else is using paper, well, you're probably going to advance past that person. If you're using AI in the computer and the other person is just doing it the way it's always been done, then the person using AI will probably accelerate and deliver more business value, and that will be the person that the employer chooses to keep if the employer has to choose between the two. So it's embracing these tools and continuously learning.
Mhm.
I've worked with so many people over 3 decades who did not embrace learning and understanding where the industry is changing. And I'm not clairvoyant. I can't tell you all this stuff, right? I missed
Mhm.
Bitcoin, right? Well, I probably should have understood that one, right? But I
Me
didn't.
too.
But
I was right there I'm right there with you. Like I watched it blow up. Like I bought some, I sold it, I
yeah,
kept a little bit, got rid of it because it's like, it's not going to no 100,000. And now look, this year I ain't gonna lie, I was shooting myself in the foot.
yeah,
Like, oh, maybe I should have kept those coins.
yeah. But
But
it's just understanding, what's changing in industry. Because some people, like, I want to do the same job my mother did, and it's
Mhm,
like, well, that doesn't exist anymore, right?
mhm,
Software quality assurance, for the most part, those roles are gone. It's moved more towards integrated development and DevOps environments, or there's certain types of roles that buggy whip makers, right? Now there's
mhm.
cars, right? People who used to make slide rules, now there's calculators, right? So it's understanding where the industry's going and putting a little bit of effort into your career to look at what the future is, and how you're going to be part of it. How are you going to provide value? Who's going to hire you? So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely can understand that, and I wish I was clairvoyant. I would have definitely kept my Ethereum and Litecoin and Bitcoin,
Yeah.
because I had a good portfolio back in 2017, but got rid of a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But we'll switch
Yeah.
gears. We'll switch gears. All that we'll catch the next train.
Yeah.
So offline, you were talking with the team about you knew a couple CISOs that stepped down due to ethical reasons. Can you share
Sure.
a little bit
Yeah, I'll
more
share
about
what I
that?
know, right? Because
Mhm.
sometimes people aren't going to tell you everything. Sometimes it's private. But I was at an event And so the first time I heard this, I was at an event and, one of those dinners where they, try to, a vendor will put on a dinner. And so before the dinner, people are talking and I was kind of eavesdropping. I didn't know anyone. And this gentleman was talking about, he'd worked for, I don't even want to say what industry it is, but he worked for this organization and he was a CISO and he was asked to lie to the board of directors. So there's a board of directors meeting. He was supposed to present to the board of directors and he was asked to make untruthful statements. Well, the
Mm,
board of directors meeting was on a Thursday. He told the truth. So he acted in an ethical manner. And then that Monday, he was discharged by the CEO. Right. And so this
mm,
is a gentleman, I don't really know him, but I had met him at that event and he probably had kids in college or high school going to college and his life, he was out of work for 6, 7 months. And because I think I still remember who it is, right? And he does have a job now, but he chose the ethical path and he can
mm.
live with himself because he did the right thing. And the
Yeah.
company, and I don't even know why the CEO is still there. And then so I made a LinkedIn video about this situation. And
Mm,
privately, about four, maybe even five additional people had reached out to me and said, same thing happened to me. Not
mhm,
exactly the same, but the same thing, right? I stepped
mm.
down from a role or I'm looking to leave a role. And no one's ever said exactly why. And the first person, I got a pretty good idea what happened because that organization was in the news and it wasn't a cybersecurity thing that was hidden, but it was a more of a political issue. But I think most of the time it's compliance because we got something in about bidding a job and it wanted like NIST 800 171. And I was reading through it. I'm like, wow, there's a hell of a lot of stuff in this
Yeah.
that you have to, and there's like, you have to be 100% compliant with every single one of these. There's no, sometimes there's like, hey, we're going to meet 80% of it. And then there's a 20% that we're going to have a plan to get to within 3, 6, 9 months, whatever that is. This one was like, you need to be 100%. And we weren't even bidding the job. I just happened to see this and grabbed it because I was curious. And there's a lot of items. And I think what happens is CISOs are asked to be mistruthful about NIST compliance or SOC compliance or another compliance because there's a lot to these things.
Yep.
And so I think that's really where it is. But I don't, I mean, thankfully I work for a really honest company. And that's really one of the things I'm blessed with is the private equity company and my CEO are honest and I'm not asked to do anything unethical. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's good in that light. And then we won't mention any of some CISOs that we know that were proven to be
Mhm.
unethical and
Yeah.
face some felony charges for lying.
Mhm.
Especially when you're running a company that investors are relying on your truthfulness, right? To understand
Mhm.
really what's the state of the business, right?
Mhm.
To decide whether if they want to continue to invest or pull their money out. So when you're
Mhm.
unethical in that sense, I feel like you're not only doing a disservice to yourself, but also to the people who are backing you, that are believing in you, and anybody. And this is pretty much anybody who's asked to do anything unethical. You have to. It's very easy to say, hey, don't do anything unethical, but there are other extrinsic and intrinsic pressures that people are falling victim to because hey, they don't want to be out of work. Like how you said that CISO, he was discharged on a Monday after being honest on a Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so some people they might be put their family ahead of their ethics because they want to make sure that they can put food on the table. And when you have
Yeah, maybe
people,
they have a disabled child or a family member that needs really expensive medical care, right? I mean,
they
there are
need
certain,
insurance,
I'm not,
right?
yeah, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I just, this is why people might do that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's
So
it's sad. Thankfully,
yeah,
I've not been in those positions.
yeah, it's very tough, and I can feel for anyone who's placed in that position. And of course, again, like I said, it's easy to say, hey, don't do anything unethical, but everybody's facing different pressures,
Mhm.
But for those who are asked to do unethical things, document,
Yeah,
because I can almost guarantee you that if things come to light, that the person who asked you to be unethical will probably sell you out and say you did it on your own.
yeah,
So that way they don't have to deal with any of those repercussions that are involved with that. Like you said, that CEO is still there. That CISO lost a job, but
yeah,
the CEO is still there. But
yeah.
to each us to own, and navigating ethics should be pretty black and white, right? As we would expect, right? There's good and there's bad. But like you said, there's all these other different pressures that could come into play for some individuals that will force them to make a bad ethical decision based on, their personal circumstances. And I can definitely feel for that, but I just do again recommend that nobody make any unethical decisions, especially when you're in a position where you're pretty much the scapegoat for security,
Um,
right? Like if something, and it's I feel like the CIO and the CISO roles over the last 6 years. Like my goal was always I want to be a CISO at a big company and run security, but it's coming to be almost a thankless job now. I feel like, and I feel for our leaders like you and other CISOs and CIOs that when everything is going good, it's like all right, yeah, good, good, but when crap hits the fan, you're to blame. You're the top of the totem pole. You're the one who has to go answer to Congress, and and all the regulators, etc.
Yeah, I think people are asking for directors and officers insurance now. So that's the latest thing I'm hearing is people at the CIO and CISO level are requesting directors and officers insurance as part of their compensation package in order to protect against, when publicly traded companies are sued and stuff like that, because there have been some cases where people were charged with crimes or had to defend themselves. So
Yep, left to hang out. I forgot what instance it was, but I know there was one CISO that said technically their insurance policy they didn't recognize the CISO as a part of the C-suite, so they weren't entitled to that protection. It's like, oh wow, another gift that keeps on giving. Like you don't recognize it as a C-suite position. Like it has a chief right in front of it. um, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. So let's kind of shift and let's talk about a little bit more on the private equity side of things. I know you had
sure.
mentioned some firms tend to approach their infrastructure in three ways: build it
Mhm.
nice, do the absolute minimum, outsource everything. Could you walk us
Yeah.
through these approaches and how you've seen
Sure.
them impact outcomes in your industry?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this, some of this, I mean, this is my first role in a private equity backed company, but I'm part of different CIO groups, so I interact with a lot of other CIOs, and there's a case where someone's hired a CIO, and either the private equity firm wants to flip it very fast, or maybe they just maybe don't have the money, but assume positive intent. And the ask for this individual was to just spend the bare minimum, and that's hard, right? Because
Yep.
there's security tools, there's improvements that need to be made, and it puts the CIO at risk for her personal career if they get hacked, right? Because
Hmm.
these things aren't always private, and so I don't think that's always the best approach. Now, again, there could be very specific cases where, hey, there's a 6 month turnaround, and this is going to be flipped to another larger company, and we just have to do the ask is these three items, and then once we get those three items, we'll put up for sale again. So I can understand why that would happen and why that minimum investment. You wouldn't go buy, 100 new computers if you're going to flip it in 4 to 6 months.
Hmm.
The other option sometimes that I've heard about is really outsourcing everything, meaning outsourcing your security, outsourcing your infrastructure, your support, and that can be awkward because there's a lot of items that don't get included in agreements. For example, if someone came up to our IT team and said, "Hey, we got a 25 million line Excel file, and we just need columns 9, 10, and 16, and we only need it for this customer," right? you know, we wouldn't want to do that necessarily, but we could do that. Like we could write a PowerShell script or pull it into, Linux and run a sed or something and get that data, right? But that would be some extra cost for a managed service provider to do because that's not part of the 32 services. And sometimes what I've seen with managed service providers, I'm not speaking for all of them, but where you look at your Microsoft Secure Score and the Secure Score is 20, I was like, look, this other company didn't have IT and their Secure Score was 35. If you're managing IT and security, how is your Secure Score 20? 20 is really not that good, right? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, how does that happen? Like, what has this company been paying you to do? Just answer the phone when someone can't get something installed? Like, what is in the agreement? And why is this security so bad? And so there's always these little things. Whereas if you have a dedicated IT team that's accountable, right, and I have vested interest in making sure that the company is successful, right, we take hundreds of tasks, right. There's always something new you find, right. There's
Hmm.
always, oh, we got to do this. We migrate to Teams phones. We want to do this, right. We can handle all of that, and I like the idea of managing it completely. It doesn't mean we don't use vendors for certain things, but ultimately, I'm the single throat to choke for the CEO and the COO. So by having a single team, we can get everything done or hire the right people to do it, and if it means, one of my team running 3 cables in a new office to put up 3 Wi-Fi endpoints, I mean, we can do that. We've had ladder safety training and man lift safety training to make sure that we're safe, right? We could
Hmm.
do that. We wouldn't necessarily want to do it, but you're not going to hire an electrician that came in for 3 wires, 3 Ethernet
Yeah.
cables, right? I mean, there's a $1,500 minimum to have them show up. And it's like, look, we can just do that in 30 minutes and get it done, right? Crimping
Yeah.
is a little bit longer, but but yeah. So
Yeah, I think probably the longest time is trying to figure out how we're gonna get the how we're gonna terminate these cat 6 cables
yeah.
and
Yeah, when
remove.
someone says, "Oh, we did it already," it's A, and you're looking, it's like, "Oh, it's B. Orange,
Yep.
right? Orange is B. It's not A." Oh,
Yeah.
does it matter? I'm like, yeah, it matters.
Yep, it definitely matters. You definitely we want that signal across the wire. So, you mentioned a good point about some contracts and stuff not having the right languages in, and sometimes you can get I want to find the best way to say it, you can get shafted pretty much
Yeah.
on the
Mhm.
service front and get nickel and dime by your
Yeah.
vendor.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
There's often the debate on how technical a leader like a CIO needs to be. What
Sure.
are your thoughts on the balance between the technical knowledge and the leadership skills?
Oh wow, there's always this is like getting teams who's better, the Yankees or Red Sox, right? There's always going to be strong opinions on that one,
Yeah.
but in this
Yankees,
definitely
by the
strong.
way.
I'm from Boston, but yeah. So
Ah,
so when you so if you're at a 20,000 person company, right? The CIO is probably not going to be that deep and engaged, right? Because
Mhm,
he or she has a lot of other issues at that large level.
mhm,
But I think someone who's leading technology still has to have technical skills. That doesn't mean that they're programming Python or they're downloading an open source camera app for their house and they're using a Tensor CPU to speed up that. Right? We're not saying that, right? But it's just having an understanding of what's going on in industry and having a love for the craft.
mhm,
And I think that many people who start with IT love the craft, right? I've always hired these people who've had like home labs that did some nonsensical thing, but they were really good at tinkering and they did really well throughout their career because they love technology. And, I heard a well-known CIO, and I don't want to say who she works for because she's been in the news lately for her company, but she said if you can't fix someone's phone in the boardroom, then you lose a lot of credibility, and that's a really, I think, a good way to put it. Right? She has a bachelor's of science in computer science, and she's a CIO now of a huge company, and doesn't obviously is not coding day to day, but she's
mhm.
still a technical person at heart, and she can fix someone's phone in the boardroom, right? But if you're the chief information officer or chief technology officer and someone in the board's like, hey, I can't get my phone to work. And they're like, oh, I can't figure that out. I'm not technical, right? They're going to be like, are you the right person to lead technology? I mean, can you imagine a chief financial officer? I don't understand math, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Or
Yep.
you ask the chief marketing officer, well, what do you think about Google Ads? Oh, I've heard of that. It seems like a lot of money to spend, right? I mean, you're going to lose that, that rapport. So
Yep.
again, I think it's still staying engaged, right? Now, again, we're a much smaller company, so I'm really hands-on. And the person who they first identified for this role didn't want it because it was probably a too technical role for what he was interested in. But as a 500 person company, I'm going to be far more engaged day to day than someone who's a CIO of a 20,000 person company that has multiple layers of executive leadership underneath them.
No, that's definitely understandable. I can definitely resonate with that. Yeah, because I have worked with a lot of shops.
Mhm.
I've worked with hundreds of different of clients that are in a lot of different industries, and sometimes we interface with the board, and the C-suite leadership. And there have been
Mhm.
times where we're giving a debrief on the engagements, security suite engagement, whether it be internal penetration test, external penetration test, general controls review on the different
Mhm.
domains that they wanted us to assess. And sometimes when we're giving the presentation, and the CISO might speak up and ask some question that's just out of pocket, that kind of lets you know, like, were they really listening, or do they really understand what
Mhm.
we're talking about here? And it's like at
Mhm.
that point, it's like you can't be like, what are you talking about? Like, do you even know what you're talking about? Like, they're in that position already, right? And
Yeah.
you just
Well,
have
no,
to,
it's frustrating, right? Because
yeah.
you see, like they got to cart someone with them, like a techie person around with them, like a pet, right? So,
I could
and
not say
again,
it
you
better.
have to know
You hit it right
business,
on the
right?
head, Tom.
You have to be able to understand how your company makes money, right? And there's this pendulum, but it can't be, oh, the CIO is a non-technical business leader that knows how to hire vendors and they
Mhm.
write the presentations, right? No, yes, and even at my level in a small company, I'm still engaged with our the business leaders to how do we deliver business value? How do we make money? How does IT facilitate delivering value to our company and our investors? However, it doesn't mean that all I do is that, and then I have multiple layers of people underneath me that also don't know anything
Mhm.
about technology, right? You have to, ultimately, I'm responsible for it. If the CEO can't get his mail, he doesn't call support. He calls me,
Mhm.
right? So I work for him, right? Now, I'm not really support, but when the CEO calls you and he can't get his mail, right, he expects me to know why, right? So,
Yep. Yep. To do that troubleshooting and figure out why. De- Definitely can understand that. So if you could give one piece of advice to other security leaders, any piece of advice, what would that be?
sure. So I think it's understanding how your company makes money because in
Mhm.
many organizations, security is a separate team than IT, and sometimes security reports into a different executive leader.
Mhm.
And I've seen cases where, security is we're secure at all costs. And then on the other side, you say, well, if we don't deliver this product, we go out of business. And going out of business and securely going out of business are both going out of business.
Yeah.
And so it's it's understanding, okay, like it is the optimal world and is we still need to make money, we still need to get product out, and 93% of the controls good enough in order to advance. Do what is our risk profile and what does the executive team believe our risk profile is?
Mhm.
Because they're the ones that are going to be responsible. And if people don't get paid or if the company goes out of business, right, there's a lot of people who are going to be hurt. And it's nice to say we're going to cover every possible case of where we could get compromised. But, when you study for any of these cybersecurity exams, they always talk about what your annual loss expectancy is. And if there is a breach, or what is the cost of that breach and what is the cost? You don't secure by a $10,000 safe for a $100 ring, right? For
Yeah.
example. So, I mean, it's just balance here. But so again, to back to your question is to understand how your company makes money and how do you as a cybersecurity analyst or engineer or leader work to ensure not only you're secure, but you're still advancing the business values.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that because it starts with understanding the business and what's driving the business so that way you can
Mhm.
figure out how you're going to support the business. Because I feel
Mhm.
like there was a shift years ago,
Mhm.
decades ago. I feel like security didn't really have a seat at the table, right? IT was just
Mhm.
seen as, hey, you just help us get set up, that's it, and then go sit in the
Mhm.
corner until we need you.
Yeah.
Now you actually have a seat at the table that's being carved out for IT and security because those
Mhm.
functions are being taken a lot more seriously with all of these relevant attacks that's going on. Because
Mhm.
certain businesses they don't want to fall victim to those types of attacks of like their
Sure.
peers have fallen victim to and end up in the
Mhm.
news having to deal with the brand reputation damage, the remediation costs, dealing with identity the identity monitoring, fraud, all that good stuff. There's a really a lot to it.
Mhm.
Kind of switch gears,
Sure.
on advice. Let's say, we gave advice to leaders, right? Let's say for other individuals that are just starting out in their journey,
Sure.
what would you recommend? What piece of advice would you give to them, that's someone that's just starting out in their IT or security journey?
I get asked this a lot from people who are starting out. And what I say is to get engaged in the industry. So start engaging on social media, on X, on LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
start building relationships with different cybersecurity leaders. And then ask them for coffee, right? It's shocking how many will accept, right? People in leadership roles are getting sold to every day, right? So they're done with people trying to meet them for selling, but
Hmm.
they're really open to giving advice to people who need that advice.
Hmm.
Right. And I started doing this in 2012, maybe 2013. I started reaching out to CIOs in the Denver area, asking for advice. And I had a 50, 60% success rate because they knew I wasn't trying to sell them anything. I didn't have anything to sell them, but they, three questions in the email. Hey, I followed your career. I've seen you done some great advancement. I would like to follow in that path, possibly. Do you have, 30 minutes to meet me one morning for coffee and
Yep.
help point me in the right direction.
Yep.
And many times they'll say yes. And people are afraid to do that.
Yep.
And now you're building a relationship with someone. And one of the best things that happened to me, I mean, I reached out to a woman named Cheryl Tilley. She was the first one. And she gave me some really good advice. And that gave me so much momentum. The next person was Jim Galkey. And I'm talking about people a decade ago. I still remember their name, right? And he told me, he says, you're no different than me. I just have the title, meaning he did, of CIO, and I didn't, but I was no different than him. And that was such a powerful piece of advice to hear from someone who is a well-respected CIO in Denver.
Yeah.
And so if you reach out and build these relationships, I mean, I got this job now because of a relationship that the gentleman who interviewed didn't want it. And he's like, you know what? I know this person who was perfect for the job. And that's how I got it. My interview was half an hour. I mean, I'd gone through other interviews, 8 hours, over
20 rounds.
3 weeks, you know, and 6 in the morning because someone in the UK had to interview me, right? And
Yep.
so you build those relationships through LinkedIn, go to different meetup groups, right? Even if it's a meetup group on, I'll say basket weaving or pottery, I'm not criticizing those, but those are just two non-IT roles. Well, you know
Mhm.
what? Someone's like, you know what? My husband's hiring someone just like you, right? So it's
Yep.
building relationships through interaction on meetup, on the different events, and just having a little elevator pitch, right? Not what you want, but what you need. Excuse me,
Hmm.
not what you need, but what you can give someone. I can
Yep.
give someone the ability to work anywhere within IT. I'm willing to do anything in IT. I'm willing to do anything in security. Instead of saying, I want to be a penetration tester. Well, we don't have penetration testers. What we have is a blue team. It's
Hmm.
like, well, that would have been good if you didn't say you wanted that. You could say, I'm interested in working in the engineering aspect of cybersecurity. Oh, would you do blue team? Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that is one of the most important things as well, is building those relationships and networking, because I feel like the relationships with the people that you work day in and day out with, or colleagues that you are fans of, building those relationships will take you so much farther than any of the technical skills will ever will. And it's like it's been a very common thing that I've heard from all the people that I've interviewed so far, and they've said
Yeah.
the same thing time and time again. And I mentor quite a bit of people who are just trying to get into the space, and they feel like they have to go chase every certification underneath the sun and try to be able to break in. But I tell them, you focus on the skills and focus on building the relationships as well, because that's actually what's going to take you a lot farther, right? Those other activities, like you said, basket weaving, whatever the case may be. Like I myself, I love mixed martial arts, right?
Mhm.
A lot of people like I guess the stigma around mixed martial arts previously was like, oh, they're dumb jocks. These guys are just savages. But actually, some of the individuals that I practice mixed martial arts with, they're very technical and astute individuals that work
Different
in
people from
IT.
different backgrounds who want to learn it,
Yep.
right? It's not just the people you see competing might be very accomplished at, but there's someone's just like, I just want to learn it. Or you
Yep.
know what, I don't want to do karate, or I tried that and I want to try something different. Yeah.
And
And yeah.
yeah, and it's been fascinating to me because it's opened my eyes. Like there's so many different connections and relationships again that I've built through
Yeah.
mixed martial arts that has connected me with people who are actually in the tech industry, and they're in roles that have influence, and they have opportunities that were presented to me to be able to take advantage of. And it's about building those relationships and being making the relationships with the people work and having those genuine connections. So I definitely can resonate with that. Make sure that you're doing what you can to genuinely connect with people. Don't try to sell them on anything. Just get to know them, understand their story first. I feel like that's been my way to get people to open up and build connections too. Is just understanding them, how they got to where they are, like kind of how we're talking now. Like this is our first conversation, and I feel like I know so much about you all already, and I can definitely resonate with your story. I can see you spent your time in the trenches and you've worked your way up, which is very great to see, and it's very inspirational. And hopefully our listeners, they can take heed of the advice that you're saying now. When you're not fighting cyber threats and running your cyber team, what do you like doing for fun?
Yeah, we have gardens at the house, so we do gardening and I exercise, I run, I lift weights and stuff. But we're still in a startup, so I work a lot. But I just got ordering a tensor processing unit for a home camera system. We have a home security camera system. I'm gonna change that around a bit and go to a different open source package. I gotta work with that, and I'm gonna start learning a ham radio. Why? I don't really know. Honestly, I think it's just a skill that I think people still need to have. And I can
Mm-hmm.
do my part to learn that skill. And the first level of a ham license is not really hard to get. The next couple levels are a lot more. But so I'm going to possibly get into that and just learn more about it. But I'm not a ham radio person. I don't own one. I just decided that, hey, I think a couple of years ago, I thought I was going to do it and didn't. And I'm just going to go learn that just as another skill, just to continue understanding, different parts of technology. So,
Most definitely. I actually, it's funny you said that. I got into not really ham radios per se, but I got into IoT because I did a lot of work with assessing critical infrastructure devices, and a lot of these devices they're IoT related, and they have radio connections, radio
mhm,
modules that are facilitating that transfer of
sure.
information.
Yeah.
So I really had to understand that spectrum, and it's a whole nother beast in itself. It's probably one of the most entertaining parts of penetration testing that I have learned so far because there's so many little neat party tricks that you could do with hacking radio signals. So definitely keep me posted on that journey. Now I know why
Mhm.
you mentioned that earlier in in the show. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the show,
Thank you,
Tom.
Cedric. Yeah.
You shared some incredible insights and experience with us today. It's been a pleasure. For our listeners, you can connect with Tom on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah. LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter too, Thomas J. Sweet, though I don't do a whole lot on X Twitter, but I'm on there. And then LinkedIn is Thomas J. Sweet.
Hmm.
And then Hotmail is Thomas J. Sweet. Website's Thomas J. Sweet.
Oh,
So you can call me Tom, but when you get the name, you can, right? And if you can get the domain, if it's your full name, then you get it. So
yep. I could definitely resonate with that. I actually purchased I purchased my full domain after I saw somebody purchase the full name domain of somebody else and went on a smear campaign. I was like, actually, let me just go out there and let's purchase this domain now.
yeah,
And let's have it. And I put my bio over there so I could definitely understand that. So for our listeners, you can connect with Tom on X or LinkedIn, Thomas J. Sweet.
yeah. LinkedIn's
Um,
probably best, but yeah.
LinkedIn's best.
Yeah, yeah,
Also, don't if you're this is new for you and you're just catching in, tuning in. This is your first episode. Please help us out. Subscribe to the show, the CNL podcast on YouTube, for more conversations with IT and security leaders just like Tom. Until next time, stay safe, stay secure.
Thanks. Bye bye.